Hello again. I hope everyone is doing well. This time we're going to do a run through for persistent volumes used in Kubernetes. If you do not already have a cluster, please try to set up a master and a single node cluster because this demo is using the Hostpath Kubernetes storage, which means we will be creating a volume directly on worker node, and we will be using that volume in our practice session, right? I took this example directly off the Kubernetes documentation. So all you have to do is navigate to the section about configuring a pod to use a persistent volume for storage. You can get this tutorial over there. Anyway, I will leave the link in the description box. Okay, so first off, we are supposed to log into our worker node and make a directory, and within that directory we are supposed to put in this command that actually gives us a welcome message, which will go directly into this directory. We are going to be using an Nginx image. So this index file will be served up by the Nginx web server. Let's just check it. Okay. Okay, let's go ahead and create the persistent volume. I already went ahead and created a file, YAML file. So the usual values are there: API version, the kind, which is a persistent volume, metadata, the name, we're using the name demo PV, persistent volume PV for short. The type is local. Usually in the CKA exam, you would not need to be bothered about storage class and all that. They usually won't ask you to configure that, so you can just read about it for your own knowledge. The most important portion is the capacity and the storage. We are trying to configure 1 GB worth of space, and the access mode is read write once. So read write once means that the volume can be mounted as read write by a single node, right? And the storage class manual means that we will manually bind the volume block with a request or a persistent volume claim. And that's the term used by Kubernetes, right? To claim the volume that we need for our pod. Okay? And of course, we need to specify the host path and where exactly this block volume is mounted. Remember, we created this directory mount/data in node 1. Yeah, so that's exactly where we are associating this block with. Okay, now let's go ahead and create this persistent volume. As you can see in the bottom window, I'm running the kubectl get PV and PVC. So anything that's done with PV and PVC will show up in the bottom window. In the middle window, it's going to give you the output for the ports, right? We haven't created any ports yet. Okay, so now that we have configured the storage, In the real world, this would be done by the cluster admin. We won't be doing this sort of task manually. This is just for test and learning purposes. The host path storage that we're using should not be used in production, right? It's just for our learning purposes, right? So next off, we will need to create a claim for this. That means a request, right? Again, I went ahead and just named it PV claim. So this time API is still the same, but the kind changes to volume claim, persistent volume claim, PVC. And the name, I chose to leave it the same name as my file. Storage class has to match the claim, right? You can't be using a different storage class between your PV and PVC. It should be the same. So manual. And the access mode also should match, read write once. Now we have this new parameter resources. So we are going to request a storage of 500 megabytes. Now take note of the value of the storage. Our PV was 1 gigabyte and I'm requesting 500 megabytes, right? So it cannot exceed the 1 gigabyte storage that you have defined. Okay, PVC cannot exceed PV. It should be within the PV. Okay, let's go ahead and create the claim. As you can see here, the persistent volume claim has been created and the status is bound. So that means this is correctly done. In the exam, please do check that this is in bound state. Okay. If not, then you got to redo the whole thing again. So after you create the claim, Kubernetes actually looks for a suitable configuration for the claim and will match it with that volume. Okay. Now next step, we need to create a pod. So again, I went ahead and created a pod. So this is a standard YAML file for pod definition. I just named the pod demo volume pod. The volume name in the pod, you can use any name. It doesn't matter. But the persistent volume claim and the claim name has to be exactly the same as your claim. Okay, the rest is the standard parameter that you get in a pod definition. And last but not least, the volume mounts is another parameter you need to add now that you want to bind the PVC together with the pod. And as you know from the previous empty directory example that we shared in the previous video, volume mounts must come with the mount path. And because we're using Nginx and we want Nginx to get that HTML index file from the directory we created on the host, the node host, we use this directory to tell Nginx to grab the index file from that directory to serve it up here. Okay. Again, the name can be anything, but usually we try to make the name factor the same. Okay. So that's it. Let's just go ahead and create the pod. Okay. It's now running. So I'm going to get a shell into this pod. Now I'm going to just curl the local host, and sure enough you get hello from Kubernetes storage. So the Nginx port is actually bound to that directory. It's using the storage from the claim, extracting that welcome message from the storage and serving it up here as the index file. Okay. Okay, so I thought we should run through and solidify what we already learned in the previous demo. So I have a sample question here to go through with you guys. So we need to create a new persistent volume named new PV. We should have a capacity of 1 gigabyte with an access mode of read write once. It should be mounted on the host path mount/data. There is no storage class name to be defined. Next, we need to create a PVC in the namespace called project new. And the PVC is supposed to be named new PVC. We should also request the 1 gigabyte storage with a similar access mode. And of course, it should not be defining a storage class name. The PVC should be bound to the PV correctly. And then finally, we create a deployment, new deploy in that namespace, which mounts that volume at temporary new data. The ports of that deployment should be of the image Apache 2.4.41 Alpine, right? So let's get to it. First of all, I'm trying to go as fast as I can. So I'm going to do the export of the do value so that it's easy for us to transform YAML output. First thing is to create the namespace. So let's create the namespace. It's supposed to be called project new. Okay. Next, we need to create the new PV. So I have the file here. Make sure everything is correct. The system volume. The name is new PV. Storage 1 gigabyte. Access mode read write once. And the host path is mount/data. Okay. And we proceed to create the new PV. I thought it would be worth mentioning because I did not mention it in my last video. Please be very careful if you do make a mistake in the exam. Do not panic. Delete the port first, then delete the PVC, and then finally delete the PV. Next, we create the PVC. So, according to the question, we're supposed to name the PVC as new PVC. Remember, we need to deploy this. This is namespace sensitive, so we need to deploy it with the namespace, right? Project new. And access mode is read write once. Storage class we need not define, and the storage value is 1 gigabyte, right? So let's create that. So as you can see, it's bound, and that means it's properly set up, right? Project new and new PVC, right? So now we can go ahead to create the deployment. It's going to be a long statement. So what I have done is kubectl in the namespace project new, create a deployment with the name new deploy using an image of Apache Alpine. And remember, I did my do value export earlier. That is just to give you the output of dry run equal to client output YAML, right? And we are piping it to this file called new deploy YAML. Let's see whether we have, yeah. You are seeing this because I forgot, because when I exported the value, I forgot to add it with equals client. That's the new command. This command is deprecated, but it will still create the file for you, so not to worry. So we can see the YAML definition of the deployment. So app new deploy, name namespace project new, all good. We have only a single replica because we didn't specify replicas. It's not necessary. The question didn't ask for any replicas, so image is correct. Let me just check the question again. They did not say anything about the container name, so we can leave it as it is. Now, if you notice, there's no volume definition, so that's what we need to do now. So again, the additions that I'm going to use, I copied directly from Kubernetes documentation. The first one, remember to match the spacing and the position. Volume mounts should come under name. Okay, done. Now let's go ahead and create the deployment. So I should watch. Okay, the deployment is up, and you have the app new deploy. So to check that everything is working properly, let's get the port. In the namespace project new, get ports output right. So we want this port. And we want to grab for value of mounts. So you see, it's correctly mounting temporary new data from the host path. Read right. Okay, so this means that we have successfully set up a persistent volume and a claim for that volume, and we have attached it successfully to the deployment called new deploy. Okay, that's it. Thank you for watching, guys. I hope you find this exercise useful, and have a nice day, and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.